Hi there, this is just a quick one to explain something interesting. A very observant viewer pointed out to me that, hey, your Filmic Tone Curve version 2 DCTL clamps the shadows in ARRI LogC3. What's going on there? And I'm not picking on this person. They actually did a very smart and reasonable thing. And what I think they did is they just had a look at a gray ramp like this and turn up the contrast in this DCTL, or maybe they didn't even do that, and then just swap this to ARRI LogC3 and then probably noticed, hey, what's going on? My shadows are just being clipped off here. What is that about? And now I switch to ARRI LogC4 and it gets even worse. And they probably wonder, what's going on? This must be a bug, right? Like this looks like it's breaking my image. And I'm just going to try to explain what's happening here and why you shouldn't worry about this. So in order for this tool to be color space aware or transfer curve aware, we need some kind of common intermediate space in which all of these transformations are taking place. And that means the first step is to transform this image from the transfer curve into my intermediate space. And if we have a look at what ARRI LogC3, for example, looks like, we can see here in the scopes, we get this log curve. And what is interesting is that this curve does not start at 0, but quite a bit above that. So what's happening if we're telling this tool, okay, you're receiving ARRI LogC3, this tool does not expect to get any values below that value. It doesn't expect to get pure blacks. But if we're feeding it a ramp like this, telling it it's ARRI LogC3, for example, it will then take these values that are not pure black, that it thinks are supposed to represent black, and pulls them down to normalize this image. And then it'll just chop off everything below that. But since we're having values that are below that value, they get chopped off. And then when it transforms back into ARRI LogC3, once it's done all of its transformations, now these values are missing. And this is why you're seeing this problem if you're just feeding it a gray ramp like this. So what can we do to actually evaluate this properly? So the first thing we need to do is we need to transform this image into ARRI LogC3 like so. Now we need to make sure that after we do all of these transformations, we go back to linear. And now we have the sandwich that has no effect. And if we now apply the contrast, let's see what happens. And now you might say, oh my God, this is even worse. What's it doing? It's clipping all of my highlights. This is not looking how it's supposed to look. Is this lying to me? Because this is telling me I'm getting a nice S-curve like that. But what I'm seeing here is this weird curve with all kinds of clipped highlights. And the reason for that is that we're not tone mapping. And now we're feeding this CST an image that suddenly has much more values than we had previously. But this is not really considering anything above 100 nits. So what we would really need to do is tone map this in some fashion. And now you see we still don't get quite a reasonable image. And the reason is that we're tone mapping an image, but the image originally didn't have 10,000 nits. But now we're telling it you have, basically what we're telling it here is you have 10,000 nits and you're outputting 100. So what we need to do is to actually tone map this going in like this and telling it, please turn this into 10,000, or just leave this off and that will do the same thing. And now again, we get a sandwich that is doing nothing. And if we now apply a contrast curve in the middle, you can see we actually get a reasonable representation of what the contrast curve in here also looks like. And now if you're wondering, but if this tool just chops off values below 0 and above 1, am I not losing important information in my image? And the answer to that is no, you're really not. Because we're in a log state and these values, if they were ever relevant, they're really not relevant anymore. And the best way for me to prove this is to go into Fusion and go have a look at a LUT that we know we can trust. In this case, this is Cullen Kelly's DaVinci White Gamut 2383 LUT. And if we just apply this to a ramp that has a little bit of contrast applied to it, we can see that this clamps our values below 0 and is actually undefined, not even at 100 nits or at 1, but quite below that. So we know that every LUT we ever apply will clamp our values below 0 and above 1. So we don't have to worry about this as long as we're in a log space. And this is just a quick explanation why this person was seeing what they're seeing and why it doesn't matter. I hope that was interesting and helpful, and I'll see you very, very soon.